Maria, hi, Jim Delapine here. I would like to give you some video feedback on your character Roy, who is wonderful, but I have some things I wanted to discuss. First of all, don't you don't have a saved and renamed channel or saved and renamed selection as a channel, so all you need to do really is, let's say, right R, you can control click or command click on the layer mask. All right, actually, that's probably not a good choice. Let's say the microphone or tambourine. No, we just, it doesn't matter really. Mouth, okay? Then select save selection, rename it, mouth, hit OK, and then you'll see it show up in the channels. So the reason for that is that you can now in the future, you can go to select, load selection, load the mouth, or you can do the shortcut of command clicking on that layer mask, and that will load that selection. So if I hit Control D to deselect and then Control click on the mouth icon or thumbnail, it will reload it. Okay, so that's the advantage of that. You never know when it's going to come in handy. All right, so let's talk about my comments to you with regards to the facial features. And I see that you tried to have some things in here that actually hold up the CDs. So you made it work. You made it work. Okay, so I see you have this little thing in here. Whatever these are, I think they are whatever these are. But I know it's a musical instrument piece. I do see you have a brightness contrast adjustment layer that is clipped for that. It's actually works against you because now it's less visible. It's more gray, and I suggest that you don't use that for that piece. All right, so let's see, where's this? That's this piece, and this piece is above. So if we remove them, you have more contrast because you have a gray background. It kind of blends in, especially if you zoom back out with these on. They kind of blend into the background, so keep that in mind. All right, so I would remove that. All right, and perhaps let's look at this guitar body. If we zoom into that, I see you have the brightness contrast here, but it's not a clipping mask, so it's affecting everything underneath. Well, actually, that's not true because you have a layer mask on there, so never mind. All right, so let's remove that. I'm going to hide that, and now we'll create an adjustment layer for that. That is for levels. All right, and I'll immediately let me just click that. I'll immediately make it a clipping mask, and then look at the levels for that. And what we can do is, because I know that this is black, a solid black, so it's a solid black graphic. You want to see some kind of gradation in here. So if you zoom into it and work with the midtones, if once I lessen that, I can see that there's all this little reflections and debris in there. So I would suggest this, that you pull this up a little bit and then go in and select the thumbnail for the image and then remove some of this debris to soften this up. So you could use the patch tools to surround areas that you don't like for example this here. I'll click this, drag this away, and all these little smudge marks, maybe the thumb, handprints, whatever, just smoothing this out a little bit. So that kind of retouching could smoothen that out. Leave this here, the reflections there. Now, the guitar neck, though, looked pretty good. So I would now just, on that layer mask, hide, on the levels layer mask rather, hide that portion so the adjustment layer does not affect that. Okay. In addition, let's get more color out of this because overall it's very gray. There's very little color in the character. So I'm going to suggest if I select the guitar body and create a use saturation adjustment layer, it will automatically clip to that layer. And then you could increase the saturation, which will not affect the blacks, but it will affect the color on that. So that will make the metallic parts more golden, so that would help pop that out. And you may also want to go in and increase, let's see here, the tambourine. Um, here with the move tool, just make sure you have auto select active or checked so that when you click on that it goes right to that layer. So let's see what we can do about an adjustment layer for levels for that. And then I will automatically clip that first. Okay, and now um, it looks like you may have, see, this histogram here is telling me that this image has already been edited a little bit color-wise, but let me just see. Let me just bring in some of the darker areas there. All right, and then maybe we can also create another adjustment layer for hue saturation to bring some of that color out by increasing the saturation. Maybe bring some of the metal, make that a little more golden. All right, so that kind of thing could work. Let's make the guitar neck look like it's going into the base of the amp more by selecting that and selecting the layer mask, and because it's going in kind of at a weird angle, so if I make sure my hardness is at 100% with the brush, just clicking and shift clicking straight across so that it looks like it's going straight in. And then what you want to do is create a shadow underneath. So what I'll do is create a new layer on top of that layer. Okay, oops. Well, I want to create that new layer so it's above that. Okay, so let me unclip it. And then I will control click on the guitar body layer mask to create a selection. So anything I paint will be contained within that selection. So with that new layer active, all right, I would probably rename it shadow. I would select the paintbrush and make my foreground color a medium to dark gray. All right, and then I'll make my paintbrush 0% hardness, and then my paintbrush, let's see, right bracket key increases the brush size, left bracket key decreases. I would say something like that. So if I click here and then shift click, I'm painting straight across. I may want to get a larger brush, but then put that layer into multiply mode. All shadow layers should be in multiply mode. So if I hit Control H, I'll hide the selection, but it's still active, but it's hidden. So now it looks like at least it's there's a shadow thrown onto the guitar neck, and it looks a little bit more realistic. Let me get my brush size to go a little bit larger. Let's see, it's at 50. Let me just let me see here. Just go really big and just click again right here. Yeah, something like that. Okay. All right. So I think something like that would help. Now, I also want to I want to also discuss the text here. All right, from a design standpoint, I remember you went to Parsons, so it's a design school. So you always want visual breathing room around any kind of important text or imagery, and so you don't want this, right up against the edge here. So let's go to that layer here. So then I see you have this little. Okay, you have an image as a clipping mask in here, which is fine. It's great. Let me just control click here. See what it is. Okay. So for the text, all right, I don't have the text in my system, the font in my system, so that's why you have that yield sign. But I'm going to, let me just duplicate this so I can leave. I'm going to hit Control J to duplicate that layer. Oh wait, I have it. See, I always forget this. I hit Control H to hide the selection, which made it still active, but I forget. So if I hit Control H again, I can see that it's there. So Control D, and then if I duplicate the selection, Control J, I now have Rock and Rock City Roy up here, and I may have screwed up something here, but let me just make this a clipping mask again. But I have this separate text up here, so let me just drag this down here. And what I'm going to do is go to my text tool, and I'm going to delete that, and I just want Roy. So I'm going to take Roy, make it all caps, and why didn't it? I'm also going to make this a very bold font. I'll make this Arial black. Okay, and there's a reason I'm doing this. So I'll bring it down here. So now up here, I'll just, well, I don't have the font, but I would delete Roy and then make Rockin' Rhapsody up here. Something happened here. I think the brightness contrast. Yeah, let me hide that. Yeah, this, let me leave it as is. Yeah, something, this brightness contrast, I forget if you had this on or not, but this blows out everything, so leave it as like this. But I screwed up something here with the text. But I would leave Roy out and just put Roy in the bottom. Take Roy, and then what we'll do is I'm going to hit Control T, and then scale him up, scale this up. I'm hitting Shift and Alt, Shift to constrain, Alt to scale out from the center point, something about like that. Hit Enter to apply the transformation, and then go to Edit, Transform. I need to rasterize this text layer, so I'm going to right click on it, select Rasterize Type, and then go to Edit, Transform, Perspective, and pull this out from the bottom. And then what I'm doing is getting the perspective for the floor. And let's say something like that. I mean, we're going to hide a portion of this, okay? So let's just say that's what it is. All right, so I'm just using that now to control click so I can get a selection out of those pixels. I'll hide that layer, go back to my background, which is the base here. You have something on top of this, shadows. Okay, so I'm going to select this thumbnail for the wood floor and hit Control J. So that copies what's in that selection to the layer above. So it looks like this. I'm going to alt click on that visibility icon to hide all the layers except that layer. So I see that. Okay. So now what I'll do is I can double click on that layer, that new layer created, and I will come up with the layer style dialog box. And if I select bevel and emboss, and then fool around with the, let's see, outer bevel, smooth. Oh man, actually chisel might work, but experiment with this, and experiment with the light source, and I mean, I'm not really crazy about how that's looking so far, but experiment with that, with the size, and you may want to also give this a color overlay just so it stands out a little bit more. So if I select that, you can change the color. If I click on this color picker box here, I can actually, once I bring my cursor outside this box, I can sample a color, any color in here I want. So that may be something to consider. Alright, so let's say it's red. Alright, but you can also increase the opacity of it, decrease it, and since it's in multiply mode, it's picking up the floor underneath. If this was in normal, it would have a different look. But multiply is definitely the way you want to go. All right, so something like that, and hit OK. So that's just a different way of having the name in here. Okay, so let's see here. Let me just, whoops. You know, you may want to do this kind of technique on the wall itself too, you know, with the graffiti text. I don't know. It's up to you. All right. So, yeah, I just want to throw that out to you. I would go into each one of these images here and make sure that if you create an adjustment layer for it, um, make sure that you have good contrast on each image. And again, it looks like these have already been adjusted somehow. So, like for example, if I bring the dogs into that, it looks more like what it should be. This looks too overall gray. There's not enough contrast. So by pulling this into the beginning of the mountain in the histogram, you'll get that contrast, and it looks more how it should be. All right, so I'm going to stop here. I hope that helped. All right, and great job. Okay.